we now can sit back and enjoy listening to Liam Evansford, and I'm delighted you're joining us, Liam, from Theatr Clywd. Those of us that were in 2012 will remember Liam with great affection as the wonderful producer at that time. And I personally can't wait to hear what he's got to say to us about life at Theatr Clywd, the mysteries. And I think, you know, just to recap, I know I mentioned it in the email I sent around, but Liam, you were there at the beginning of the Supporters Trust and really mentored us in that first year in particular, and guide our steps. So it's lovely to have you back with us tonight. And I'm going to hand over without more ado to you to take us forward.
Well, yes, I've had my supper already, so I don't need to sing for it. I'll just, it's lovely to see so many familiar faces, and forgive me, I've got kids left, right and centre using the internet. So if I'm a bit juddery, bear with me. Our bandwidth in North Wales is not as good as you good folk in York have. Yeah, do you know what? It's astonishing, firstly, to see so many people agree on votes. If only our politicians were as efficient as you all are. And secondly, it's amazing that the Supporters Trust is still going. You know, those kind of early days. So more power to all of you. I don't know if I know all of you. I know the majority of you, and vice versa. So I thought I'd give you a little potted history on who I am. Then give you a bit of an oversight of Theatr Clywd, and then we can just have a bit of a chat, and you can quiz me on anything that may be of interest to you. So I trained as an actor at Bristol Vic. I thought that treading the boards was the thing for me. Had an amazing time doing that, and then I was very fortunate to enjoy a bit of a gallivant around the world doing some acting. I managed to play at the RSC and went to the West End, and I did some TV and film and adverts. It was all very wonderful and exciting. However, even at drama school, I realised that the area of the sector I was going into as an actor, you were told whether you had an agent, then you got told whether you had a job, then you got told if you got the job, and when you had the job, you were told the lines that you were going to say, how the director would like you to say them, the costumes that you were wearing, and the design of the set. And I kind of thought, well, I think I fancy a bit more of a say in things than that. So I set up a company called Sprite Productions. We did a lot of crazy outdoor Shakespeare at Ripley Castle, just down the road from You Fair Folk in York. I started a production company in London called the Factory Theatre. You will find this terrifying. We didn't rehearse anything. We kind of trained for it as if we were a sports squad, and then we let the audience decide who was playing who each evening, what the props were, what the costumes were. It was an absolute harem scarum ride, but we did it because we were excited to see how we could recreate the magic of rehearsals rather than rehearsing the magic out of it, which is what happens in UK theatre quite a lot. In Europe, they're far more free-flowing. And then I decided that London didn't suit us as a family, and I moved to York, to Yorkshire, and I got given the job of community producer on the 2012 mystery plays, and I have to say, that completely changed my life. And I'm not saying it because of the crowd here. It completely changed the way I viewed my profession of theatre making, and how working with the community felt more important than my career development, which when you're an actor going into the commercial side of the sector, it's all about you. What's my next job? Am I ever going to be a star? You know, all of that rubbish that comes with it. And as you know, 2012 was the most extraordinary experience. I think the youngest person we had in the company was 5 years old. He used to come with his mum. And I think the oldest person we had at the time in the choir was 97 years old. And everything in between, people who were out of work, people who were chief executives. Oh, do you know what? We were doing the pack down on the mystery plays in 2012. And I was driving the van with a fella. I can't remember the name, his name, or the part he played, but we got talking, I'd known him for what, 6 months? We must have been working together by that point. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I gave up my job and decided to go into the acting profession. This is one of the first things I've done. What did you do before? Oh, I was the executive director of DHL in Asia. He was the chief executive of one of the biggest delivery companies in the world. I didn't know that. It was the most extraordinary experience. It changed my life. And then I kind of got kicked around with Blood and Chocolate, literally kicked around, which was the kind of the follow-on, I guess, in York, wasn't it? Trying to take the soul that comes with the mystery plays, community involvement, telling stories on the streets of York in the open air. And then I went off to Sheffield Theatres. I went to Sheffield Crucible. I did my time there as general manager, and then I came back for that slightly mad few years of York Theatre Royal's Capital project, where we went down to the Railway Museum. And then I got a phone call. I was lucky enough, I started getting headhunted for things which I didn't really realise existed in the theatre industry. And I got told about a new executive director position at a place called Theatr Clywd. That's what the South Walians say. They say Theatr Clywd. In North Wales, they don't say that. They say Theatr Clywd. It's far more simple. Does anybody been to Theatr Clywd? I wonder. Raise your hands if you've been to Theatr Clywd. Oh, a few of you have. Bernard has. He's got around a bit. I know Bernard has. I'm just going to show you a little picture of Theatr Clywd because it's the most extraordinary place. Can everybody see that? Morris, can you thumbs up? Can you see it? Okay, so this is Theatr Clywd. It's not a beautiful, a few hundred years old theatre like York Theatre Royal. It was built in the 70s, 1976. It's not in an urban centre like many big theatres are. It's on the top of this hill, with down to the south is the small market town of Mould. And really, it shouldn't exist at all. When it was first opened, this half of the building to this side was the public realm. The other side was a technical education centre that HTV ran up until the 90s. And it shouldn't be built because it cost an awful lot of money. And there's a story that tells the legend of the then chief executive of the Clywyd County Council, a chap called Hayden Rees, who had been working in Germany and seen the amazing community art centres that they had in Europe, and came back to take up post in North Wales and said, my community deserve an art centre like that. And he had lots of opposition. So the story goes that on a Friday evening, the cabinet agenda was stacked full of nonsense. And right at the bottom of it was the decision to fund the building of Theatr Clywyd and the Technical Education Centre. And all the lazy councillors had gone home by the time it got through. And he managed to get it built. So that was 1976. And it's the most extraordinary space. We have a main house. It's only 600 seats, but it's beautiful. The Anthony Hopkins Theatre, named after him because he performed Uncle Vanya there back in the early 90s. We have the Emlyn Williams Theatre. That's a 250 completely flexible space. It can do everything from traverse to in the round and on either which way. Then we've got what is the old TV studio, because the theatre has grown, the operation has grown into the old Technical Education Centre since HTV left, that holds 100 people. We have a cinema, 115 people. We have 3 art galleries. And we have an event space that you can do weddings and, bar mitzvahs and everything in between. The most extraordinary thing about Theatr Clywyd is that it has all of the making departments in-house still. So we have an in-house costume making team. We have in-house scenic artists and a full-size paint frame, so they can stretch the canvas the whole width of the main cross arch stage and get up and kind of on hydraulics and paint in beautiful detail. Scenic construction department and a props making department. So we are only of one of 4 theatres in the whole of the UK still to have all of those making departments. Hands up for guesses who the other 3 are. Theatr Clywd and who else?
RSC.
RSC, correct. That's 1. Morris.
National Theatre.
National Theatre 2. The third one's always the trickier one. And it's not an opera company. Opera companies don't, they cheat. They've got far more money. Philip.
Where's Plymouth?
Do you know what? Plymouth don't have their props making department anymore.
Not anymore? Oh, okay.
No, you're right. They've got all of the others. Birmingham Rep, believe it or not. Yeah. But Plymouth have got a brilliant producing house. So we're very, very fortunate. Just to give you an idea of the scope of our work. So I'm now responsible for 140 employees, and they're all still employed, even during this last year, which is a little luck and a little judgment. If I'm a little luck and a little judgment, if I'm honest. We employ usually around about 115 regular relief workers, so those kind of Kazis that come in and out, bar work, backstage workers that don't want core employment, and another 300 creative freelancers a year. We've had a bit of an astonishing kind of last 4 years. So when I arrived, we were turning over similar scale to York Theatre Royal, actually, turnover of around about 5 million a year. That's gone up by £2 million per year. So our turnover is now 7. I would say that. I'm executive director, so it kind of sounds impressive, doesn't it? But we've done that in a number of ways. We've lowered the lowest ticket price for our audience and still increased turnover. We've got more people coming through the door. We've done lots of interesting things around subscription. So if you buy 5 tickets for 5 different shows, you get them heavily discounted. So people are kind of buying more volume. It's quite exciting how that's worked. We're the 3rd biggest client of the Arts Council of Wales. We don't have to worry about the English Arts Council. So the 2 biggest clients are Welsh National Opera and Wales Millennium Centre, both in South in Cardiff. So we're quite an important strategic partner. What's this? Emlyn Williams, yes, the autobiography. He actually went to the school in the village in which I now live, Emlyn. Superb playwright and an amazing life story, absolutely. We've also really, and this is taking what you all taught me into Theatr Clywd, we have really increased our community programme. So we're now responsible for all of the music education in our county. We've taken on all of the music services. The local authority were going to cut them. And we said, no, we can sort that out. We'll work with the teachers. We'll remodel their pay conditions onto our house agreement and we'll save the service. And alongside our creative engagement team, we deliver about 500,000 creative workshops every year. So the creative engagement department had 2 staff members when I started. They've now got 33. And they've got artistic expertise in theatre making, in dance, in visual arts and in music. And they do the most incredible outreach work. I mean, we're in quite a deprived area in North Wales. Some of the areas, Connors Quay, Greenwood, they've been decimated over the years as the mines were closed, as in industry closed. And they are not the communities that would naturally think about coming into a theatre space. So we try our hardest to go out to them and bring them in. And we've also had some of the more sexy success, I guess. We won an Olivier Award in 2019 for Home and Darling, Best New Comedy. They've since scrapped that award, so we'll be the last winners of it. We've just been awarded Regional Theatre of the Year. And my 2 biggest pieces of work are changing the governance structure. I'm currently a civil servant. I'm currently employed by a local authority, but on the 1st of April, I'll be taking us into an independent trust. And we've also got a major capital redevelopment to deliver. The building that I showed you was opened in 1976. It's not had any major investment since then. In 2010, there was a condition survey saying it is about to fall apart. Somebody sorted out. I got appointed in 2016. Nothing had happened. So we're currently in receipt of Welsh Government money for what will be a £42 million capital redevelopment, which sounds terrifying. It is terrifying. If you think of York Theatre Royal's capital redevelopment, I think that was £7 million, and that was pretty big, wasn't it? But the really exciting thing about that is that it will have dedicated, as well as enhancing the facilities, it will have dedicated spaces for arts, health and well-being, kind of a growing strand of work that's really, really important to me. Dedicated spaces for young people and the work that we do with them. Dedicated spaces for driving revenue and, you know, all of that resilience that everybody thought was important before the pandemic. But actually, the organisations that have done better with that have struggled most during this last year. And then enhancing all of the training facilities around our theatre making. I won't have any medieval hospitals to uncover, thankfully, Margaret, I know. So that's a little kind of potted history of me and Theatr Clywd. I ought to stop talking and we ought to have a bit of a natter, I guess. But basically, diolch yn fawr for having me. Thank you very much for having me.
People might want to unmute and have a bit of a conversation about all this. But Liam, that sounds so amazingly exciting. No wonder you're glowing with it. A huge agenda there, and you know, congratulations on making so much happen. Where are your centres of population then for bringing people in? Is it, because it looks really quite rural?
Yeah, it is. So there's only 800. Well, the last census, and there's a new one being done now, isn't there? But there's around about 800,000 people who live in the whole of North Wales, and North Wales is massive. Geographically, it's a big space. However, we're right on the border, so we're 10 miles from the border, and just over the border, we've got all of Cheshire, all of the Wirral, and all of Merseyside. So 46% of our audiences come from over the border. So we have around about, including all of the engagement work, around about 300,000 people come through our doors each year. I mean, you know, all of this is pre-pandemic, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that explains it then. One of the things we're struck with in the Trust is about engaging young people, particularly in something like the mysteries, which is, if you like, a sort of niche interest in some ways. Have you any advice for us on that matter? How we might draw more youth into this experience?
Oh, I don't know if I've got any advice that is easily taken on board. I mean, as ever, it's about who you see when you walk through the door. We talk about a lot at Theatr Clywd. So, for example, our volunteer program that we found, we've got about 130 volunteers who just help with some of the ushering around the theatre. I mean, most people are employed, but there is a demographic. It's mainly people who are retired because they've got the time to give to that. And as we've tried to kind of broaden that demographic and get more young people volunteering, the thing that the handful of people who are, you know, kind of 35 and under, let's say, they've always said, well, when I come to Theatr Clywd, I don't see myself, and that's the big challenge. So when we've gone out to recruit for the volunteers for Theatr Clywd, we've made sure front and centre are the younger people, kind of pushing that, so that when they're talking to peers, they can see themselves. I think we're just about to set up a youth board, of which we have the older members of the youth board. So the chair of it is 23 and part of one of our kind of was a youth theatre member and is now in our Company 25. They are going to take a formal trustee position with our legally and responsible trustees, and she will make sure that she is talking and taking the case of the youth board, who goes right down to the age of, I think the young person is 11 on that, and making the case to the board and the senior management. So there may be some clever mechanisms around that there's some sort of youth board on behalf of the supporters trust that could be formed, where it isn't about legal responsibility. The stuff that you have as committee members, anybody under 18 can't do that, and it can be quite daunting, can't it? You know, when you're talking about accounts and articles, Philip's just been talking about all of that stuff. So how do you kind of just knock the edges off that so that people actually feel confident about being able to contribute, I guess?
Thank you. I'm inviting questions, or
can I just say, Liam, it's lovely to see you. The last time we saw you, it was very sad when you were leaving York. And I'm just wondering that the role you have now seems totally different from the role you had when you were in York. And we always thought you were a wonderful people person and actually involved with the shows. I mean, I was in Blood and Chocolate, remembering you charging behind us, shouting at us. Do you miss that element of what you're doing now?
Yeah, deeply, Noel, actually, deeply. I miss being on the ground. However, the people person side of me has served us well with the politics that float around my kind of role nowadays. I deal an awful lot with local politicians, in Wales national politicians, and of course I've got 140 employees and almost 300 livelihoods to look after. So I've kind of applied to that. I really missed it during the first couple of years. I think now I've kind of found my feet in this new role. But who knows, one day maybe I'll get back to being on the ground and charging around with weapons or whatever it is.
You don't teach them how to fight anymore then?
I do occasionally do fight workshops for the youth theatre groups. Yeah, keep my hand in. I tell you what though, I've never acted more than my current role. Yeah, you've got to pretend all of the time.
Bernard, did you want to come in?
Yeah, increase so, Liam. Have you got a programme set up for the summer? Because I'm going to be spending some time in Wales during the summer.
Yes, I do, sir. I do. So our current direction of travel, let's call it that, for this year, is that from May onwards, we'll be able to have open air events. We're quite low. You've seen the pictures. We're not landlocked. We've got loads and loads of outdoor space. So we were the only theatre in Wales last year who were allowed by Welsh Government to put on live performance. And we did that in the open air. We were the test partner for Welsh Government. And they've confirmed that we're able to kind of take up that baton this year. So from May to mid-September, there will be an open air programme. We've got a concert stage and all sorts of programming. So will you pop in and say hello, Bernard?
I will, yes.
We'll be releasing dates on that probably in about a month's time.
Is it mostly touring companies then?
It's a mixture, no full productions. It's more music, comedy, concerts, that kind of thing. Full productions are really challenging. Although we do have a new piece called "For the Grace of You Go I," which will be on in July. So you can. That's a romantic comedy. You'd love it, Bernard.
Right.
Simon, I think, was wanting to come in. I've got you keep shooting. The screens keep shooting around. Simon.
I was just wondering, I know Theatr not in Welsh Wales, but it is in the north. So I was wondering whether you were under any pressure to have Welsh language activities.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Simon. Yes, so with our Arts Council funding, we have, I wouldn't call them quotas, but there is an expectation on us to deliver a certain amount of Welsh language programming. So in our county, it's 13% of the population are first language Welsh. When you head over to Gwynedd, over in the west, that jumps up to almost 90%.
Yeah.
And we serve all of them. It's a real challenge though, because it doesn't have the same audience base. So the finances on box office are far less for our Welsh language programming than they are for the English language, especially when we have so many people coming over from England. But I've got Welsh heritage, and I hadn't realised how deeply political and important it is. So I quite enjoy the challenge of progressing the growth of the Welsh language now in my role.
Yeah, well, my sons went to Bangor University, but came back without a word of Welsh, even though it's the heartland of the Welsh over there. And I was just wondering, do you do any stuff apart from main stage activities? Do you do like children's things and stuff in Welsh or whatever?
Yes, we do. So the Welsh Government by 2050 want to have 1 million Welsh speakers. And so we have to report against that to our funders. And the biggest way that we can grow that is by working with young people. So yeah, we've had, even this Christmas when we weren't actually able to stage many shows, we had a Welsh language Christmas show. So there's more of an audience for young families with Welsh language.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Interesting. Any further points, anybody? Oh, Roger, come in.
Hello, Liam.
Roger.
So lovely to hear you. Very, very concerned that you in Wales, and I'm very glad that you haven't talked about last Saturday's performance or shenanigans that went on there, my goodness. But my question actually is, can you tell us a little bit more about what aspirations you have, say, for the next 2 or 3 years? What are the key things that you're aiming to achieve over the next 3 years?
I remember Roger always asks the difficult questions, doesn't he?
No, I asked, well, hang on, wait a minute. The first thing I should then ask is, are you permanently in Wales now, Liam, or are you seeing common sense and coming back soon?
I am permanently in Wales. I've got a big job to see through here, Roger. And I would like to say that I do think that Welsh referee's got a really dodgy French accent.
Good.
So
your aspirations.
What are the big things? Well, is my internet really juddery? Are we all out
You're
of
back,
sync?
it's fine, you're back.
Okay, these kids, honestly, YouTube, it's awful. I have a massive job to steer an organisation through what is a 2-year capital project, and out the other side. So you will all remember, to varying degrees, how much York Theatre all struggled coming out of capital. They were in real financial difficulties, and we've seen the cost of that with both Liz and Damien departing for one reason or another, for better or worse. So my job is to make sure that the employees are safe, are happy, they're not overstretched during that time, that we keep audiences coming up the hill. I think one of the main challenges in York was that everybody was relocated down to the National Museum. That continuity was difficult to keep, wasn't it? And then coming out of the other side, making sure that we make the most of the boom year before because historically you look at capital projects and there's the year where everybody wants to come and see the new building. And if you don't get it right in that first year, audiences really drop off for the next 2 years are really challenging. So that's my major focus all of the time. And I don't know whether I'll be able to do it or not. We'll see. And if not, I'll be back really soon, Roger.
Okay, thank you for that, Liam.
Wonderful, Liam, uplifting. And it sounded great. And obviously where you are, it is great. But in terms of looking at nationally, looking at the professional theatre, I mean, what you were saying sounds like we're just going to all bounce back and it doesn't matter. But hasn't, in fact, long-term damage been done to the performing arts in general and professional theatre in particular?
Yes. Yeah, you're right. We're in a relatively positive position, as I said before, for one reason or another, and many aren't. I mean, Royal Exchange in Manchester, for example, which is in between where I am and you guys are, they've made 80% reductions in their core employees, and that a lot of that is the theatre making. A lot of that is the technical teams and the making teams. And the other big issue that you'll all be aware of, because I know you kind of keep track of the industry, is the freelance community and how many people are dropping away from the theatre sector because they've just not had employment for 12 months. It's not been there. I think it's a real challenge. That said, I do think theatre's been around, as we know, for hundreds and thousands of years and will find a way to survive. I think the biggest challenges for UK theatre, one, we've got this really difficult hybrid model. We're not like America, where it's all about philanthropy and the patrons, basically the audiences. There's no public funding really in the States. So they only ever make work that is commercially wanted, that people want to see. We're not like Europe, where we're getting 90% funding, so the European theatres and Scandinavian theatres, they've been able to continue throughout this and survive throughout this and keep on employing and paying artists, many of whom are paid by the state, by the way. And we've got this kind of mini hybrid in the middle where we get a bit of funding, but we're also encouraged to be commercial. And as I've said, the organisations that have been most hit by this are the ones who have driven real commerciality, more money at the box office, more secondary spend at the bar. So I think the funding model is absolutely broken in the UK and it needs sorting. And I think the pandemic has highlighted this. Whether the politicians, cross-party in specific parties, can be made to take a different approach or not, I don't know. The other thing is that if we're really honest, equality is a massive issue for the industry. It really is. We have been seen for too long as elitist, and the programming has been based upon the tastes of mainly, I say this as a white male leader of an arts organisation, but mainly white men. And all of that has to be rebalanced through this. So there's some big stuff to sort. I have no doubt the industry will survive and thrive. The knocks we take on the way, Jed, I'm not quite sure, but I'm positive because I'm always positive. You know me. I always am, and I think positive energy kind of breeds positive outcome, and I'm sure the industry will survive in one way or another. But there's a few more who are going to fall before the end of this pandemic, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a very realistic assessment, Liam. Thank you. Are there any further points anyone would like to make? Well, we've got Liam here. It's lovely. I think we need a trip to Theatr Clywd at some point, Liam, very definitely. Well, in that case, I'm going to thank you very much, Liam, for your time tonight and joining us. Absolutely lovely to see you again and really inspiring to hear what you're doing down there. And I mean, people can either give a virtual clap or unmute or whatever, but thank you very much indeed. I'm sure Our paths will cross again before too long. That'd be lovely.
So lovely to see you. And Harold's got Harold Knight too. And is he red team, green team, blue team, or yellow team? That's what I want.
Those are the days.